Good morning, everyone. Good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of The Art of the Mating. This week we have a very, very popular man. Every week we ask you, what do you want to hear from? Well, there was a stampede to get this man on the show. Steve Davis, it's great to have you with us.
It's great to be with you, Jack, and nice to be joining, and hello to everybody.
So, Steve, where are you at the moment?
We're in Perth. We're in self-isolation in a 3-bedroom house at Guildford, which is about 10 minutes away from the sales complex here in Perth. We've got a sale in February, but under the jurisdiction of Perth, you need to do 14 days self-isolation before they let you out.
Have you been going stir crazy? What have you been doing to entertain yourself?
No, it's great. I'm actually with Grant Burns, one of my fellow auctioneers, and Chris Farrelly wants to be an auctioneer, so we've been beating the heck out of each other. So no, it's been good.
I know Chris well. I'm sure you've probably taken turns pretending to auctioneer Chris, just trying to sell him to the highest bidder or something, because 14 days of the three of you all stuck together, it can't be easy.
No, it is, but I tell you what, we're eating up a storm. I didn't realize Chris or Grant could cook as well as they do, so it's going well.
Okay, great. Well, Steve, as you know, you came to our attention here up in Europe when you went you were a little mini viral sensation for us up here in Europe, because we're trying to always sell horses. We're trying to think how best to do it, and the question just stays with us the whole time: how do you sell a racehorse? And well, you kind of gave us our answer this week, and that was when on my Twitter feed, and we'll just make sure we click in, we roll down, and then I don't get many likes on my tweets. I'm very unpopular, unfortunately, Steve, but one thing that did go viral, as you say, is my tweet of you of last week. And this is you selling the Schnitzel colt, the top price at the Magic Millions Gold Coast sale last week. So we're going to turn on the volume and have a listen.
900,000. If they were with $1 million count before you, I thought this was the one to come for you today. 1 million left. 1 million left. You get a listen? 1 million one. I'll put you to 50 left.
Just making sure the audio went across there. Ooh. It's got very, Steve, it's so impressed with your auctioneering, it's got a little bit temperamental on me. So let me just play it again. Oh, that's unfortunate. My word, such was the compelling nature of that effort selling horses. It doesn't want to do it for me. So anyway, I would encourage everyone to go follow it, because it really, really was remarkable, Steve. And what I found remarkable about was the kind of, how would you say, the kind of personality you put into it, the rapport you had with both the underbidder and the successful bidder, Coolmore. You might talk to me a little bit about that, and your approach when you're selling a big ticket yearling like that Schnitzel colt.
Well, to be fair, Jack, I had no idea who was actually bidding on it, because in Australia and Australasia down under here, we deal, and especially when you're selling a Magic Millions, because it's such a big sales arena, you're reliant upon your bid spotters. So I was simply, taking my lead off the bid spotters' calls, and as you went through the auction, and I was, when we got to 1.3 or whatever it was, and then 1.3.5, and then the other guy had come back very quickly, and it became apparent to me that I thought, well, this guy's bidding so quickly, he's clearly the one that's going to probably get it. And of course, I often say what I think, and of course that's when the old favorite came out, and you just built upon that, and it was just one of those things. I mean, you're saying things to try and create and get someone to bid again. You're looking for that little something that may inspire them to have a bid. And in this particular case, I suppose it worked. I had no knowledge that James Heron was the underbidder and that Coolmore were going to ultimately buy it. But yeah, it was quite funny. I mean, it's one of those horses that you look back. I sell a lot of horses, and I suppose it's one that I will remember for some time.
It's fascinating to hear you that, and he talked about the effect an auditorium might have on your bidding, because I think about Caraca, which is a bit more of a cloistered kind of close quarters, if you will, auditorium, and of course the Gold Coast, which is just absolutely is massive, and how that changes your style. When you have a bidder's, you're gazing at a bidder and you can see them and they're responding to you directly, does that change how you approach it as opposed to working through a spotter?
Yeah, no question. And you're right, Jack. I mean, I sell subtly different here in Australia than I do in New Zealand, because as you know, Caracas and Auditorium, and 90% of the time I can see you bidding, so you can make that eye-to-eye contact. In Magic Millions, you're reliant on your bid spotters. I mean, I can see 2 or 3 of the tables, but some people out there won't appreciate. Now, we seat probably 800 to 1,000 people. They go back, almost, it seems like 50 to 60 meters in front of us. You've got literally no chance. There's people out the back. You can't see who they are. So I'm very much, and my fellow auctioneers, very much reliant on the bid spotter to do, and they're an extension of me and my other bid spotter auctioneers to engage with the buyers. As I say, outside of the first 2 or 3 rows of tables, I've got no idea who could potentially be on it.
I suppose, when you're trying to create that atmosphere, and we have 800 to 1,000 people in an auditorium and they're watching you sell a horse.
Fed and watered.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a lot of water.
How important to your process is entertaining them? Even if they're not interested in this lot, that they're feeling compelled by the auction as a whole.
I think that's probably a little bit that I've not adapted, but it's something I've always believed in, that if people are going to spend 100,000, spend 10,000, that they should enjoy doing it. And I suppose the other thing is you engage the crowd, then you get everybody with you, and it's actually a subtle way of creating a bit of time between that person bidding and the next person bidding. If you're just calling out numbers all the time without engaging or making comment, then all of a sudden people say, come on, knock it down, knock it down. You actually, create the illusion of time. That gives you that little bit extra that gives them a chance of bidding back. And also, obviously, you're looking to try and say something may stimulate them to, bid again.
But, it's very interesting to hear you say that. And I'm conscious that Magic Millions was actually extended by 2 days this year, and there was a little bit more time given each day as a result of that. But there's a very interesting conversation happening in Europe at the moment, and that's that they think that our style of selling horses is too slow. And that we're finding ourselves having sales days where staff are starting at 5 o'clock in the morning and they're not finishing till or even earlier, and they're not finishing till 10 p.m. at night, and it doesn't really feel sustainable. But then you've got this other thing out there, which is this 2-3 minute process that you are in charge of, Steve, where you sell a horse. To achieve the best possible price, sometimes that process takes time, and sometimes it takes 10 minutes. Like, where do you stand in that balance about giving a horse enough lot and actually making progress in the sale?
I think, to be honest, I mean, I've been to Tattersalls. I haven't sat. I've listened to Goffs, etc. I really believe here in Australia we've got the balance right. You can have a bid at Tattersalls, go out, cup of tea, and come back and have another bid. It seems to take too long, and I'll never probably sell at Tattersalls there. I just think it takes too long because it's unfair on those horses being sold at the end. We sell at a rate I think is about right. We sell between 30 and 35 lots an hour. You go to America and they can be up to 40, 42 lots. I mean, I think that's almost too quick. It's just bang, 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 bang. I think in Australia we give them the opportunity. People know when they walk in the ring they want to buy that horse. They know in their mind what their value is that they're going to go to. And it's just probably educating your buyers to that sort of system. I think that's the problem you would have in the Northern Hemisphere, is instigating doing 30, 32 lots an hour, because the buyers would be so used to it. I suppose you're going to sacrifice a few early to get to that stage, but it's just a learned process. You come to an Australian sale, you don't sit on your hands. You put your hand in the air and you buy the one you want.
But it's interesting to hear you, Steve, as the ultimate charmer when it comes to eking out an extra bid. And you've just made the statement, they know what they're going to spend on the horse. But Steve, that isn't really true. Buyers can be compulsive animals, can't they? And they sometimes the plan can go out the window a bit.
Look, I suppose, but we'd be, I suppose, self-indulgent. We think as auctioneers that we have too much influence on it. There are horses and sales where you believe you have some influence on what the person do. You cajole another bit out of them. But basically, buyers come in with especially syndicators and those that we have here, with a set price. That's the price in which they got to operate on. Yeah, look, there are times when you feel as if you've made an influence, but I think we're a little bit prima donna-ish if we think that we have too much of a prima donna, if we think we have that much of an influence. We just do our best.
And I think it's important to dwell. You know, you've talked about the rate you sell at, which is 30 to 35 per lot. In Europe, it can be, you know, a Premier sales, it's about 25, and it can even be less at times, which is awful slow to get through, you know, 200 horses in a day or even more. Sometimes a 300 horse sale. So I can exactly hear what you say. But I suppose, Steve, when you talk about your developmental lawyer, you know, you started out, you were going to be a teacher, and the auctioneering was a summer, you know, the kind of the sideline for you to become where you are today. You might talk about how your style has evolved, and mentors and people, other auctioneers you've looked at that you've kind of gone, yeah, they've got about the right stuff. They're people that I could learn from.
Yeah, well, look, you know, I started, I was very lucky. I worked under a guy called Kevin O'Connor, whom I still consider probably the best general auctioneer I've ever, you know, worked under. I clerked underneath him, and that's the key as a young auctioneer, whether you're at the stock sales or wherever, you go and listen to the best auctioneer and you replicate them, because as soon as you replicate them, people are going to accept you quicker. You don't want to go out and try and establish a different style, completely different to that they used to. So I was very fortunate. I worked under, you know, Kevin, and as a result of that, developed a style, I suppose, similar to what I am now, but I you know, I dare say if I went back and listened to myself from years ago, it'd be totally different. And then I moved from doing the stock, you know, into general auctions, doing cars, and then got picked up by bloodstock. And I worked with, you know, Peter Kelly and Joe Walls, who are like the doyen of bloodstock auctioneers here in Australasia. And you learn off them. You stand and listen and hear how they go. And I've always said, to being an auctioneer, 50% is standing up in front of people. So half the people that can stand up in front of you, halfway there, if you can stand up in front of people. 25% is your knowledge, your understanding of the pedigrees, who you're selling to, what you're selling, and who you're, you know, selling for. 15% is your patter. As I said, it's like replicating someone else. And it's that 10%, which is the X factor, I suppose. That's that personality. And I'm fortunate that over the years that I've sold for a number of years now. December 1984 was my first bloodstock sale. 84, Jack. You probably weren't even born.
Well, I admit I wasn't, Steve. This wasn't. Yeah, and I'm lucky because you might have put me through a ring at a weanling sale if you did get hold of me. So I thank you for that. I thank you for that.
Yeah, so you know, I'm fortunate that my style's developed, and you get to know the people you're selling to. You know. You know, I go to so many sales throughout Australia, and obviously do now South Africa. I have done for 20 years South Africa. So you get to know these people personally, and so you form a rapport, and you know what they like, and so you do make the little chip, the little chirp, and things like that, which may get them to put their hand up. And I suppose the more important thing is the vendor. For mine, is if the vendor thinks that the bloke standing up there is getting him the most money, or the most possible money he can get. When you turn around him and a little bit under the reserve and you say, listen, I'm flat out here. I got 80,000. I can't get you the 100, I don't think. What do you think? He's going to say, well, he's done all he can. Let's put it on the market. Let's sell it.
And people would be very interested, because I'm conscious we have viewers that are experts, you know, that really understand bloodstock markets, that are selling horses constantly, that are buying horses constantly. But we also have people that join us every week, Steve, that, you know, they don't know the process of selling a horse and the process of setting a reserve. You might explain how that works, how the theatre is then translated when you're selling a horse, even if there is only one bidder. How do you manage that process on behalf of a vendor so that they get to the requisite price they want to get the?
Well, I suppose that's the thing about the auction, and it comes down to that 2 minutes, and you can say, how long do you get in the ring? You know, it's 2.5 years probably. People sort out the stallion they're going to breed their mare to. They get the mare in foal, they foal it down, they then grow it out, they get to the yearling stage, they've selected or been selected for a particular sale. And I then, as one of the auctioneers, will go out and look at every horse I sell. So every horse I see, I look at before the sale starts. Back in my early days, I used to think that if I was going to have an argument with the vendor, I'd used to do it, you know, I'd rather do it at the box than in the rostrum. I've changed a little on that over different things that have occurred over the years. But so I'll go and talk to the vendor before the sale, get a feeling for where they sit. If we're poles apart in terms of value, I may discuss with them at that stage. And then obviously the horse will come into the ring, and we'll count up all the bids we can and get it to the price at which they are. And once it's on the market, away we go, hopefully.
And Steve, we can talk about the $1.9 million schnitzels all we like, but are there particular instances, selling that 10 grand, that 50 grand, that 100 grand colt or filly yearling, that were particularly gratifying? Did you have any kind of instances where you kind of go, that was good?
Yeah, look, as I say, I've spoken to the Daily Flying Starters and those, that were part of the team this year. Being that's the key to me. The 1.9 sell themselves invariably. For me, it's the greatest thrill is when somebody gives you a $10,000 reserve and it makes 40 or 50, or somebody buys a weanling, as we had, has had, for 80,000, say at the 2-year-old sale in New Zealand. Bought it for 80,000 and we resold it for 525,000. I mean, they're life-changing events. They're life-changing amounts. A lot of people are used to getting $1 million, but when you sell something for someone where it's actually made a physical, like a personal difference, it's great. That gives me a hell of a thrill, and there's been instances of that right throughout, and to me, as I've said before, the ultimate for me is when, the buyers buy it and they're high-fiving each other, and the bloke behind you or the lady behind you that owns the horse is in tears because it made so much money. That's the ultimate sale.
Hopefully that's my next one you're selling, Steve. But and it's amazing, isn't it? Because people ask me sometimes, what do I find the most compelling aspect of horse racing? And genuinely, I would say it's bloodstock auctions. I think there's remarkable theatre to it, and I think it's something we should be very proud of, the event that it creates and the anticipation it creates. Because at the end of the day, Steve, I suppose when you're standing at a rostrum, you're not really selling a horse, are you? You're selling something a bit different.
Yeah, we sell dreams, and I'm sure if you spoke to John O'Kelly and Henry Beebe and Nick Nugent, Alistair Pym, they're doing the same. We all do it in probably a different way to some extent, but we're all doing it. We're all out there selling dreams, and that's what it's all about.
Now, I'm conscious we've already got a number of questions in our Q&A function. I don't know, Steve, if you want to click in, see if you like any one of those, want to take any one of those questions on, maybe shout out their names and see what they have to say for themselves.
Do you think an auctioneer can get price far above what a person originally wants to get? Well, again, I suppose it comes back. There are times when you think you have an influence. But to say that we have an influence over every lot is, it's thinking too much of ourselves. We do our best, and sometimes because of our relationship, it works. Can I confirm that Steve is a world class and also a gentleman? Oh, very nice.
And Steve, that doesn't appear in the question and answers. I don't know where you're reading that from. Actually, that's a bit odd.
I think that was written by my late mother somewhere else.
And Steve, you touched upon some of our European auctioneers, Nick Nugent, John O'Kelly, Henry Beebe. Any reflections on them, perhaps in their younger years and their style of auctioneering? Any memories?
Look, I sold with John O'Kelly, I think in Adelaide and also in New Zealand as well. And obviously sold with Henry Beebe in South Africa, but clearly the one, and I enjoyed selling with both of them, but the one person I love selling with was Nick Nugent, because he's the ultimate entertainer. You go out for dinner, I've been in tears crying. He's just a wonderful auctioneer, raconteur. And, gee, I tell you what, I enjoyed his company immensely here. In fact, I missed a plane because of Nick Nugent.
How did you miss a plane? What did Nick do?
Having got home from celebrating the sale, I thought I'd lie down for an hour, and I woke up at the time my first flight, or the actual flight I was booked on, had taken off. So thankfully managed to get on the next flight to get myself back to New Zealand. But super guy, as all the auctioneers are. I mean, we're a team up there, and that's the key to any successful auction, is the auctioneers all working together and working as a team.
Yeah, and actually Nick appeared in season 1, and Nick tweeted me and said, you have to get Steve on, Jack. So there you go. The feeling is very much mutual, and it's good to see there's some forgiveness there amongst the pair of you after having to miss a flight because of Nick's. I would definitely echo what you're saying about him being a danger around sales time. But Steve, I suppose I think that's really interesting what you're saying, that it's a team of auctioneers and you're working as a team, because I think some people might think, you're standing in front of the auditorium, it's a bit of bravado, and perhaps there's a bit of ego that you could do a better job than your fellow auctioneers. Is that not the case? Is it how do you approach
all the time? I beg you to go back and look at Grant Burns selling the $1.8 million yearling at the Magic Million sale recently, and time how long it took him to sell. He was looking for that $2 million bid. He was just wanting to.
He'd nearly put up his hand himself. He'd nearly put up his hand himself just to get the...
We're about to bring the next lot, and it'd been in there that long.
And going back to the Magic Million sale, you know, an incredible sale, the Gold Coast sale. You know, it was 2 days bigger, but it was the highest grossing Southern Hemisphere sale in history, $212 million. Some reflections on that and the robustness of the Australian market.
No, look, it's just incredible. And that's the thing. I mean, it was a remarkable sale. There was a lot of trepidation before it because so many people that normally attend the sales couldn't be here. But the team at Magic Millions did a super job getting all those that could there on the facilities, because Queensland, a little bit like Perth, are very hard on their borders. You know, I came over. I mean, I was booked on probably 4 or 5 different flights before I managed to get on a quarantine flight, free flight to come in to Queensland so that I could do the job I did. And you know, we were surprised. I mean, there was a lot of questions going in that, you know, of all the years to put 200 more horses, and this probably wasn't the one. Well, maybe as it's turned out, we did the right thing, because you know, we've seen so much money injected back into the industry. Great support, great horses too. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we get up there and get the limelight because we're knocking these things down. We've got a team of people that go out into the fields, out into the paddocks, out onto the stud farms, work with the vendors to get the best catalogue possible. And I think that's the one thing about this year's sale at Magic Millions. It was one of the best catalogue physically as well as on paper. And if those two came together with it, which it did, it was magic. And so it worked out.
And you know, it's a tale of two worlds, isn't it, as well? Because, you know, we have the Karaka, you know, your country, and I saw Gay Waterhouse tweet this morning, and it really struck me. And it was her having a Karaka party, you know, to watch it online, and how COVID has changed profoundly how we buy and sell horses. Kind of reflections upon this crazy year, Stephen, and how it's affected the job you do.
Well, it certainly has, because all of a sudden I'm looking down the camera, but like now, you know, you're talking to whoever it is behind the mouse, clicking, you're coming up with all these new phrases in terms of, you know, quick, click the mouse, you know, and all those sort of things to try and get them to bid. So all of a sudden you've got a live audience, and you've got this people sitting there behind a computer or whatever that may be, bidding away. And so you've got to interact with them as well as those that are in the auditorium as well. So that's changed. That's changed the style, and at the moment it seems to be working well. You know, and I watched the New Zealand sales today. You know, it's quite disappointing. It's the first sale I've missed in 20 years, and to be quite frank, I missed a couple at the end of the 90s. It would have been only the third sale I've missed in 30 odd years. You know.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, I literally just glanced down at my phone, and I'm in a WhatsApp group with some Australian friends. Corey Smith, he's probably watching in. And we have horses with Troy Corstons, and we've great hopes for what they might do in 2021. But it's fascinating. They're talking in the WhatsApp group as we speak about Gay Waterhouse. Have you seen her? She's bidding on these horses at home. It's great fun. It looks mad. Like, there's something compelling about it as well, isn't there? That there's some that you can recreate the excitement maybe in different ways.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In some ways, it's a little, well, that's how syndications work, isn't it? That's the key to syndication. You can have 5% of the horse, but you get 100% of the, you know, of the satisfaction, the thrill, and the excitement of it winning. And same with what Gay has done, and putting that party on, so they're there, they've got the big screen and everything, and she engages people to say, okay, this is the one we'd like, we've done the work, bang, and everybody's excited, and they all buy into it. And that flows on then to race day, and it's all about communication and bringing people together. And I think that's the one thing about Australasia that we have that has been really successful down here, and that is syndications. I mean, there are a multitude of them, and they have been somewhat successful, all of them just about, you know. So it's great to see so many, the little men getting involved.
Yeah, and it is. And I run a syndicate up here, Steve, and I suppose I'm constantly looking at the Australian model and looking at the way you sell horses. It's just, you know, I think of Jim Clark, you know, what he does on Instagram. I know that seems a small thing, but he does a remarkable job, and he bought 19 horses at your sale just last week, which is a testament to Jim and how they go about, you know, Troy Corstons every day after the sales. He sends me an email, the recap of what happens. You know, it's remarkable to kind of see the professionalism that goes into it, and to contrast it with Europe. And Europe it's a different style completely. It's a more presumptive one. Oh, people are going to come to me and they'll approach me, and I don't need to come to them. And you know, there is a real lesson in the success of syndication for Europe in Australia for us. And you've touched upon a little bit the 5% guy having 100% of the value, but you might talk a bit more about why it's so successful, and so successful at the sales as well, and the way it works frequently for syndicators at auctions, and how they re-syndicate so quickly.
Well, and that's the case because there it's televised. Obviously, they're out there. They've obviously, because they're constrained by the fact that they have to have the the boxes ticked, and things. It's got to be vetted. Everything's got to be done properly. So people buy into that. So everything is in that regard looked after. They're protected, and the syndicators are there. They're buying horses that they believe they can go out into the market and find buyers for. And at the moment, they can't go anywhere else, people. Where do you go? I mean, you can go interstate, perhaps. You can't go overseas. So house sales have boomed, car sales, boat sales. I mean, even in New Zealand, the same thing has happened. And the stake money here is so good. That's the exciting thing. You know, you can buy a filly. She goes on. She always has residual. Or you can buy a colt. And I tell you what, if your colt comes out and bang, because of the shuttling of the horses from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, all of a sudden they're worth 20 or 30 million. You know?
Yeah. Utterly extraordinary.
You can actually almost say it's an investment, almost. Not quite.
People might not understand. You know, 20. You said, you buy a yearling like that Schnitzel colt. Makes 1.9 million. That, the people buying that colt are not stupid, are they, Steve? They're doing it for a reason, and they're doing it as an investment. It isn't just an ego trip, and I've bought the most expensive colt at the Gold Coast. It's actually, they're trying to make money out of that colt.
Yeah, no question at all. They are seeing that horse and saying to themselves, this colt could well be a classic horse. He could be a late 2-year-old, he could be a 3-year-old, he could be a Caulfield Guineas horse. Bang, next minute, the phone call's going. If he's won those Group 1s, given the pedigree hold, the sideline he has, and next minute, their investment of 1.9 million. Now, let's go back. I mean, of course, that mare was initially, I think we sold for 850. She was resold in fold a Schnitzel for 1.2 million, I think. And so now there are, those people that bought that mare in fold to Schnitzel have returned 1.9 million. So there's been returns all the way through. And obviously the person that bought the colt, as we talked about, is hoping that one day that colt could turn out to be a 20, 30, who knows? It could be a $50 million horse.
Yeah, it's an utterly extraordinary game. That is the case, isn't it? And you think about the people who bought the mare. They've still got the mare. They can do the trick again. It's not. It isn't just this one and done. That can happen again and again, and that's the remarkable thing. The rewarding thing for a lot of people about horse racing and investment is they can dip their toe in. They can be the 5% merchant, but actually at those upper echelons, there are rich rewards to be had, and there is a real vibrancy to the Australian market in particular that is quite remarkable. It really is. Steve,
I think, can I just say that, Jack, that's the one thing about being an auctioneer of horses I love. You sell a car, a 2020 whatever, or 2010 Toyota Corolla or whatever, it's got a set value between $5,000 and $6,000. You get up to sell a horse, it can make between $10,000 and $100,000. Depends on which two people want to buy it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it has 4 legs, and a heartbeat, and it's walking around. It likes munching on grass. The actual item itself doesn't change that much, but it's the fact that when it comes to a race course, there's a perception that this horse can perhaps run a bit quicker than the $10,000 cousin. But it doesn't always happen, does it? The $10,000 horse does actually win those races sometimes too.
Yeah. And that's the exciting thing, and that's the love of the sport, is that you can buy a horse for $20,000, go into a race, compete against one that they may have paid $200 for, and beat it, because the horse doesn't know. It doesn't come out with a stamp on its forehead. I mean, at the end of the day, it's there. It's trained up, and it can run or it can't run. That's the excitement. That gets back to those dreams, Jack, that we sell as yearlings.
Yeah, and I think but sometimes, Steve, like the dream doesn't work out. You kind of have. You buy your horse, it's not particularly fast, and you probably have a bit of a middling experience with the whole thing. How do you keep people coming back? How do you kind of look them in the eye, get the next bid when they've kind of been let down the last time with that next bid? What is that, compelling thing, do you think, that gets people to come back, no matter if they're knocked down a few times?
Well, I think the other people we love in the industry, those that get knocked down early, the worst people in the industry to some extent, I shouldn't say worst, but the people that are hard to swallow, those that get their best horse at their first horse, because after that, they think it's easy. The people that get the knock to start with and keep coming back through the door and trying again and trying again. I think the thing about it is having people, trainers that communicate, syndicators that communicate, that keep people involved. And I think that's the end of it. You've got to have enjoyment. Yeah, you can't all have a Group 1 horse, but you've got to have fun, whether you're winning a race here in Western Australia at Pinjarra or Bunbury, like we did with a little horse that we've got a share in, or whether you're winning at Randwick. At the end of the day, to get them through to the next horse, they've got to have a great experience with the first one, no matter how poor it may be. And you don't want to farm the horse. You don't want to have it going round and round and round and round. You want to say, hey, look, let's stop, let's get into something else because it hasn't worked out as well as we'd like. Honesty,
Yeah, I suppose, and you talk about the experience. When you think of Magic Millions Gold Coast, the sale itself, much more so than in Europe, is an experience, isn't it? It's something that you want to be at, and kind of, embrace as a kind of whole, week-long experience, or even longer now. Just the whole thing is part of a bigger ecosystem, isn't it?
It's an experience. I mean, you go there. I mean, Katie Page and her team, and obviously with the support of Jerry Harvey, Katie Page has created this event. It's an event. We've got the polo. We start with the polo. We have the barrier draw. They gallop the horses down on the sand at the Gold Coast. They gallop them down there when we do the barrier draw. I mean, they draw more people to there than we get at race meetings in New Zealand, or probably even some of the country tracks here in Australia. It's amazing the amount of people that go to it. They have a pre-party prior to the sale, which is probably one of the more sought after events people want to get tickets to. Then you've got the auction itself. You've got the races on the Saturday, which is just, this year was restricted, but we can get over 20,000 people going to the races on the Saturday. So we're getting people to buy into that experience. And it's a little bit like, for me, it's when you see the horses getting saddled or in the bird cage, as you have, and the owners are inside and you're on the outside looking in and you're saying, geez, one day I want to be inside there watching my jockey get on the horse. And I think that's the key is we put on this event, people get sort of caught around the outside. You might come for the first couple of years. Next time you want to say, hey, listen, I want to be involved in this. And that's the flow on effect from creating an event that they have.
Yeah, and we hope that people tuning in all around the world do want to get involved, and we hope that the people watching afterwards also want to get involved, because it really is a remarkable thing and a remarkable week to be at. Steve, I'm conscious you've got so many important things to be doing there in your 14-day quarantine. There's seasons to be watched. There's Netflix to get through. There's your Chris is cooking up a storm there in the kitchen. I suppose before we go, and I just wanted to go back to that, because it's so striking, your style of auctioneering and how you approach it. And you talked about the patter, and you talked about 10% of it. But I suppose when you're looking at other auctioneers and you're thinking, what do you think, being an auctioneer, the amount of people tuning in that want to be auctioneers, what does good look like? What is a good auctioneer? Because I really think that is something fascinating to people, and something I'd love to hear your thoughts on.
Look, I think to be a good you've got to be yourself to start with. There's no point trying to be someone you're not. And I think you've got to have a genuine love of what you do. There's that old adage, you work a job you love, you never work a day in your life. And that's been the case with me. I love auctioneering, whether it's, I know I do horses predominantly, I do art, and I've done other things. I just enjoy it. I love that thrill of selling. It's like speed dating, Jack. You got 2 minutes to get the buyer and the seller together, and a happy marriage hopefully is put together. You love it when you sell the horses. As I've said before, selling the cheaper horses, just getting the horse sold is a benefit to some people. Look, I listen to other auctioneers. As long as they've done their homework, they've done their updates on their pedigrees, they've gone to see the horse, I've spoken to the vendor. that's all you can do. After that, it's over to you. And I don't want to clone Steve Davis, and we don't want too many Steve Davises going through. And I'd like to keep doing this for another 5 or 6 years. I don't need too many good ones coming through at all. Jack, I got to be honest. I'm worried about Chris Farrell. He is very good.
I know. Yeah, we don't need Magic Millions doing any speed dating with Chris Farrell anymore, do we? We need to rein in that lunatic. But no, Steve, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been great to chat. Thank you in your evening. It's brilliant. I hope best of luck over the next while. I hope you get through quarantine okay. Just to let everyone know, as always, as we've had this week, we listen to your requests and we make them happen. So thank you very much for joining us this week. What do you want to hear for next week? Just send me a tweet. That's the best way to do it. And we will make it happen. So thank you very much for joining us. Have a great rest of the day wherever you are. And big thank you to Steve for being part of it this week.